Hey everyone, welcome to Buzzing About Romance, a quick shot of romance. I am Becky, and joining me for this quick shot of romance is Carolina. Hi, Carolina.
Hey, Becky.
I am so excited. On this episode of A Quick Shot of Romance, we are reviewing Something Unexpected by Vi Keeland. This is a standalone romance with an HEA. I must preference this does have an HEA.
Yeah, you emphasized that before I read the book, which I'm glad you did because, yeah,
Yeah, so we're going to release this. We might spoil a little. This is one of those books that we hope you'll come back to this quick shot after you've read it. Because there's some big things to kind of talk about in here. We don't want to give away too much, but there's some things I really want to talk about with this book. Um, I do think this is one of those books that is best to go in blind.
you can read the blurb
Okay.
because I just reread the blurb. And after, because we recently recorded, and I think it'll air before this,
Yeah.
a whole episodes about blurbs and content warnings and all of that. I have to say, Vi Keeland writes incredible blurbs
She does.
because this is the quintessential, like the prelude to the, or like the setup of the book. So what you read in the blurb is what happens in the first couple chapters. So it sets up the whole story. It doesn't give anything away after you read the book. So you can read that, get a sense for it, and you really do go in blind um, to what's about to unfold.
Yeah, it's I went in blind. Vi reached out and asked if I wanted a copy, and I was like, sure. She sent me the book in the mail and then sent me the e-arc. I was so happy. Um, because I mean, I'm a Vi Keelan stan. Like, she writes it, I read it. Sometimes I love them, sometimes I'm like, what did I do there, sister? Um, but overall, I just really enjoy her writing style and who she is as an author.
And I will also say that this is one of her more emotional books, emotionally driven stories. A lot like if you read Hate Notes,
Hmm.
this is a lot of the same feels and journey throughout the story. So buckle up.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot. Summer Proposal in there. It deals with some pretty heavy topics also. Um, but anyway, so we'll link the synopsis of this book in our on the shelf show notes at buzzingaboutromance.com. This book, Something Unexpected, was released July 1st of 2023. It is a grumpy sunshine, single dad, vacation fling, meet cute. Can we just real quick talk about their meet cute?
Get through that and we'll talk about the meat cute.
Second chance at love, book boyfriend material because I'm still in love with Beck, just in love. And adversaries to lovers. They aren't really enemies. They're just on different sides
Yes.
of an issue. Did you do
I
the?
would
Go ahead.
I would also say that he falls first vibes.
Yes, he
And I
is.
don't want to say anything else beyond that because it would give stuff away.
So did you do the audio of this?
No, I read the book.
So I was lucky enough, Katie from Lyric Audio sent me over the audiobook and I just did some listening. It's Teddy Hamilton and Andy Arndt. And Teddy did a really great job voicing, Beck and Nora, our heroine. I love Andy. If Andy reads it, I listen to it. I really do
Yeah,
enjoy her narration.
she does a great job.
Is there a third act breakup? Yes, there is.
Yes.
And I'm still not sure I'm over it. And content warning, this is end of life choices. There is grief and loss of loved one. So let's talk a little bit about their meet cute because I talked about that and that just I feel like that set the tone for this book because it's kind of a two-part meet cute.
It is. I will also say that the meet cute, after reflecting on the book and like thinking back to it, provided so much depth to these characters that and setup that you didn't realize. I don't think I realized and appreciated until after I finished reading the book.
This is
Like,
this is definitely one that you marinate on after you read it. I made the mistake of reading it, and as soon as I was done, I finished it, and then I went to sleep. And the next morning, I woke up, and I made a TikTok with my review of it, and I'm like trying to hold back tears because the more I thought about it, and you don't want to spoil it, but you're just the words. You're just like, this book, this story. Um, it just anyway. So let's talk about their meet cute. Our heroine's name is Nora, and our hero's name is Beck. They are in a hotel lobby. I think they're in Idaho at the beginning of this,
I don't
somewhere in
remember.
the western states. Um, but Nora is on a Tinder date, and the guy leaves and leaves her with the bill for a very expensive glass of whiskey.
Yes. Um, and it like then you have Beck who kind of shows up and like grumpy his ways in there,
Oh yeah,
and
he feels like he needs to comment on her,
yeah.
like, because she starts yelling at the guy that's leaving in the middle of the bar.
So I mean, it immediately starts with kind of this adversary tension and which is so interesting. And one of the things that so they really go back and forth. They have such great banter that you get like I was snickering when I was reading it. Like you get swept up into it and easy to get lost into that element of it. Um, but there are things that you realize, like little breadcrumbs about their characters and who they are, that kind of stays as a constant, even though they have character growth throughout the story.
Yeah.
So things like, at first Nora doesn't like him at all, and then she starts like really observing him a lot more, and she starts noticing his watch, and I can't say the brand because I don't. Audemars Piguet watch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably butchering that. Versus a Rolex, and
Fancy watch.
it's a very. I mean, I went on the website. I'm like, okay, how much is this watch? They don't even list their price on the website. You have to make an appointment to get the price. That tells you how expensive the watch is. So, but she talks about in the book that like people wear a Rolex for notability
Right.
because it's flashy and other people know it. And then she says this particular watch you wear for yourself. So she actually kind of was like, okay, that's 1 point for him that she didn't expect like to like him for it. Um, and and then you also kind of realize throughout this meet cute that ends up like ends up with their fling, almost like that. It's a setup for a one night stand, right? And then that doesn't happen. And when you get into kind of the reason why, you start to realize how thoughtful and observant Beck is.
What a stand up guy he is, and
Yes.
where his priorities and just how good his heart is and how he thinks things out. He is a businessman, he's a wealthy businessman. And I think that we see this throughout this book in different situations where, his instinct is to go full force, but then he steps back and realizes that it's not always right for me to make that move forward. He critically thinks things out, which I really loved, particularly when we get to the end of the book, when there's some really tough life choices that have to be made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but let's go to the second part of the meet cute so we can get into the rest of this. So the second part of the meet cute is the next morning he comes out of the hotel, he comes off the elevator into the lobby,
Oh,
and
and we didn't mention the whole reason he's at this hotel is because he needs to confront his grandmother and his grandmother's friend who are doing this bucket list Um, and he is trying to put a stop to all of that.
Yeah. So he comes off the elevator and there he sees Miss Nora getting her coffee. And the next thing he knows, his Graham is walking up behind him and says, "Oh, you met Eleanor, who is her friend she's traveling with to do this bucket list." And part of the reason that Graham wants to do this bucket list, she has her second round of pancreatic cancer, and there's nothing that can be done. So instead of being sick from treatment, she's made the decision to live life to its absolute fullest with the time she has left. And
Yeah.
boy, does she. The antics and the shenanigans. I mean, we're talking paragliding and skydiving, um,
Snorkeling.
snorkeling, swimming with sharks, skinny dipping on the
There's a
beach.
there's a whole like Nora edges her into going skinny dipping that that then some teenagers steal their clothes
Yes.
and which then there's a chase to go after the clothes, which then leads to getting them arrested.
The whole scene, that was my one of my favorite scenes in this book, was the scene in jail when Graham and Nora are in jail.
And then they have to call Beck to come to bail them out of jail.
And they're in the Bahamas, he's back in New York City.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Let's talk for just a second about Beck's daughter
okay.
because she's adorable. Adorable. Her name is Maddie. She I don't think he's divorced. I just think it was a relationship and they had a baby together. Was he
I thought they
divorced?
got divorced.
No, yeah, you're right. Ex-wife. Sorry.
Yeah, it's ex-wife. Didn't work out. They have she's super precocious and like has her own vision like for activities in life and what she wants to do. So much so that there's part of it that she she saw somewhere the Girl Scout badges and she didn't want to be a Girl Scout, but she wanted to earn badges. So her dad, like, and this is another part where you just fall for Beck a little bit more once she's introduced and you hear this story. Like her dad figured out the badges and what they each needed to be. So he's been helping her earn each badge. And I think, I mean, what when we learn about the story, she's got like 19 already
And she
or
needs
something like that.
32 or something.
No, I think there's like 75 of
Oh, is
them.
there?
I think there's like this huge number of badges, but and yeah, so she's been working her way through and earning all of these super cute badges because he shows Nora a picture and he thinks she has her sash on.
Yeah.
And so she's like, is she a Girl Scout? And so it becomes this whole conversation.
So let's talk about Nora's character a little bit because while Beck is dynamic and he was swoony when he needed to be swoony and he's not so over the top that you're not that he doesn't like steamroll his way because there are several times in this book where he could steamroll
Mm-hmm.
his way through the situation. And I like how Vi kind of wrote him and tempered him back.
Yeah.
But let's talk about our heroine because one of the things that Vi has done, and she's done this in previous books, she kind of deals with some big life pieces. You know, she doesn't shy away from the hard stuff. And in my review, or in my trope listing, I didn't add she's technically a real bodied heroine because she has scars.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't hide her scars. She's not ashamed of her scars. Um, but the way Vi writes her is she's living a parallel life to her mother. So she lost her mother when she was a young child. She was raised mostly by her stepfather, who is a great character in the book, too.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about a man that lives and loves his words, right?
Right. So much so.
But and I don't want to give too much away about Nora's life and her journey.
And it's really interesting. I'll add that the for a significant part of the book, I would probably say like 65 to 70% of the book, she's a little bit of an enigma. You get just enough that you like her. You like how she keeps Beck in his place to a certain degree. Like she doesn't let him get away with stuff. And the way she does it, it makes Beck think. So it really challenges him where he doesn't get that a lot in his life. Like his brother is this happy kind of go lucky guy and things fall into place, the charming younger brother. But Beck really makes her think about his grandmother's choices and why she's doing things, and just doesn't kind of roll over and just give up answers. So for a lot of the book, you get to know her, but there's a lot more going on than you sense. And so when all of it's revealed, there's a little bit of I let on this one, there's sometimes where you just let the author take you. Like I didn't try to overthink it, and I let the story guide me. And so like you just didn't anticipate some of what was real or what was going to be revealed.
Okay, so I anticipated none of it. Like I didn't have a guess that this is where we were going to go or this is how things were going to move and the
Well,
emotions.
yeah, and there was a lot of like, it was almost like role reversal in the sense that Beck became the like pursuer so much more. Like we typically see heroines or female characters in that, like they become the ones that are like he can't wait to like talk to her again. And there's a whole this thing like with texting, and he wanted to hear from her and she wasn't responding, or like he really wanted time with her. At first it was to get her in bed, but then after a while it was just he wanted time with her, and she kept pushing him off. Like she kept saying no, like that's not what I want. I think there's a whole thing in the book of like, why I like Tinder dates is because there's no expectations. Like we
Yeah.
can get together, they can make me forget, and we move on. Like stop cramping my style almost kind of feel to this, because he kind of he wanted just a little bit more, and she was
Yes.
trying to set firm boundaries, which is that role reversal, which I thought was really interesting.
It really
um
is. And he was definitely, I do think that plays into the he falls first vibes
right.
because he was ready, even with some unknown aspects of her life and how she was going to move forward in the world. He was willing to not, I don't want to say look past that, but he was willing to embrace that and move forward with a life together, whatever it could look like, whatever it was going to be. It was going to be
Mm-hmm.
together, the two of them. And there are some things that happen. Graham, is definitely at end of life, and that's very clear. And um, if you know anyone with pancreatic cancer, it's not pretty, right? And she takes sick in at one point. I think they're in Nashville or something, and Beck has to come, and there's some things that happen. And in the midst of all of that, you see him just step in and take ownership of the moment. And while, yes, he wants Graham to make some choices that would keep her there because she raised him and his brother,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't like, it's not like I'm going to court and ruling you, incompetent. He doesn't do any of that. He really does
No,
listen. Um,
it almost like he becomes that little boy of like, I want my grandmother, like
yeah.
I don't want to lose you. um and that's hard when for anybody losing a positive parental figure in your life. um
And there's another character in this book. It's Beck's brother, who's kind of the comedic relief, the goofball. I love how Vi Keeland gives us these kind of one-off characters that are just supposed to be the good time guy, but he ends up being so much more and so much more insightful. I really did love him.
yeah, it was kind of it was this great contrast to Beck, um that it also really, because he kept, I think, the brother helped really saw how much Beck was pretty much falling for Nora, and what that looked like. And so he kind of made him vocalize it, like, and really just have those conversations to push him.
So there's a really great line that Graham states in this book that I it's a line I'm not going to get over for a long time, I think. And I think some of it is dealing with, I've seen people at end of life and the hospice care and stuff like that. So, it's something to hold on to. She says, you never truly die when you live in the souls of the people you leave behind. And there's a scene where Beck takes Nora to this little cabin in the woods that was where her grandparents fell in love, and there's the waterfall, and
yes.
Listen, you guys, I started and stopped crying in this book at least 15 times. At least 15 times. But
it was also a big moment for them as a non-couple.
Right?
Like, I think there was also comfort in somebody you care about, but also like knowing that this was just like a weekend trip. But you hear some stories about Graham and her husband that just, like, I'm not going to say anything more than that, because talk about incredible love.
Yeah. It was also a little bit of foreshadowing without you realizing it.
Yes. And it just, so deep. So deep.
This book pulls you into all of your feels. The thought of soulmates and your heart belonging to somebody else, and, looking at your own mortality and what you want to leave in the world. You get in that grand love that sometimes is just simple of holding your hand when you don't feel good.
Right.
So, anyway, I don't want to spoil anything else in this book. I feel like we talked good enough about it that we didn't really give any big things away.
If you listen to it and haven't read the book, like, you 1000% need to read, listen, whatever, this book. Like, do it. It's got big feels. Highly recommend it. It's probably, I've got like 2 or 3 books that are like my top reads, and this book makes this list. Like,
yeah, there's one other book that was sitting clear at my tops, and it was your book of the week for our blurb episode, and we did a quick shout out.
For the Love of Whiskey by
For the Love of
Whiskey.
Yeah, that was my top read of the year, and then I read this book, and now I'm like, what is happening? Why are you doing this to me?
But it's one of those books that you read it and you're like, I needed this so much. Like,
it reminds me why I love romance.
Yeah.
It's the story, it's the emotions it lists, it's the feelings of passion, sometimes in that moment of darkness. Romance helped me get through some really tough things, when my boy child was sick. And so, these feels are things that you need just to kind of ground yourself. And this book is one of those that's like, hold it up, because this is why romance is amazing.
Well, and it's one of those, because you have rom-coms that bring levity and, make you laugh. And this one just brings these deep emotional feels that sometimes you want to get into that and have you look at life in, not, I want to say in a different way, in a bigger way.
Yeah. And
at the same time being a more simplistic way, so it just makes you think a lot. And this is one that you think about for sure.
Yeah.
Like, for weeks after.
For a long time. Do you have a title you think we should review for a quick shot of romance? Send us an email to thebees@bookcaseandcoffee.com. Carolina, thank you so much for joining me for this quick shot of romance.
Absolutely.
Until next time, everyone, happy reading.
Find us on Instagram at buzzingaboutromance or on Twitter at buzzingromance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.